Hello, Kyrie Edwards here, running for Maryland's 4th Congressional District, here to talk to you about affordability. I want to give you a little bit of background on my experience, I guess. So I want to preface this by saying I do think we focus a little bit too much on like the big shiny resume, and that's how we end up getting elites running our government. And just because like you have money and prestigious jobs and prestigious resume, I don't think that means you should be discounted. But we have a very insular system that rewards itself, rewards people because they were in the same fraternity. You have a lot of, sorry, I'm going to pick on you, but kappas that, you know, oh, you were in the same fraternity, that's my sister, or sorority. Um, well, she should be the next city council or county commissioner or, congressman. And I just don't think that's inherently fair. Or if someone went to Harvard and that's enough to get you in the door. Doesn't matter if you did bad at Harvard, if you did good at Harvard. And sometimes people care about that. Like Obama went to Harvard and was president of the law review and clearly had good grades, but um, other than Republicans trying to force him to publish his transcript, which was silly. Most people were fine. They just stopped listening after Harvard. Like that's enough for me. And the attacks on Obama was that he was a community organizer, and that was supposed to somehow be a degrading position that should mean he shouldn't be president and didn't have experience to do the things to run a country, which was silly. Actually, it ended up being one of the more disappointing parts of his presidency was he didn't bring that experience to the White House to do more organizing. But also, we probably had too much of our hopes and dreams held in one man. We shouldn't have counted on him to do everything. He was right in that regard. We should have, you know, pushed for more continuously. And if it upset people um, temporarily, we should have been okay with that. And we got there eventually. We had you know, um, sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but where the 99% comes from. We had Black Lives Matter protests started during Obama's terms, and we had plenty, and on the right, you had the Tea Party. You had plenty of people pushing back against the established systems and pushing back on the systems, but that pedigree seems to still be there. We still want to look at that. But I do have a nice shiny resume, so I'll talk about it. For the affordability portion, I am overqualified. Um, I did go to college. I went to University of South Florida for 2 years and got a bachelor's in criminology and psychology. Before that, I went to community college for 2 years at St. Petersburg College. My hometown is in St. Petersburg, so I did the responsible thing you do during a recession if you want to go to college and stay at home. I didn't go out of state or even out of the county for the first 2 years, and we had a program to where after you complete 2 years, as long as you're in good standing, you can transfer to another public university in college, or sorry, in Florida, um, and be guaranteed one of your three choices. So I applied to USF, my top choice, UF, which denied me twice. Still bitter about that. And FSU, and I got into FSU and USF, and decided to stay close to home. And I commuted 2 or 3 times a week to the Tampa campus, and um, eventually ended up taking out loans in order to secure transportation and housing. I had plenty of scholarships. I worked 2 or 3 jobs depending on the semester, and I still ended up with student loan debt. After I graduated, I worked in juvenile justice, which I've mentioned in some videos, for about 3 years. Um, I volunteered a lot through college. I was president of my college chapter's um, Circle Kiwanis International. I was also on student government and the Veterans Association. I'm not a veteran, but my mom and brother and grandfather and some cousins are. And so I made some friends in my capacity as Circle Kiwanis president, and so I wanted to, network and meet all the people. Bit of an extrovert, and I like excuses to meet people. And the Student Veterans Association had some really cool people. Some older who were obviously returning after their service, and some who did it the other way, where they went to basic, they went to college, and then they were going to serve. And so I just learned a lot about the VA, where I did a lot of volunteering, about some of our service members' views on some of our allies. It's where I heard lots of pushback for our alliance with Israel from a lot of people in the Navy. Won't name their names, but you know who were stressed out by Israel continuously flying low over our ships and harassing other countries, and I found that to be very interesting. But also, I learned about a lot about healthcare, and I volunteered for Habitats for Humanities and Ronald McDonald House, and some cancer orgs, and all the things. Built houses, cleaned up trash, helped tutor people, college students, middle school students, high schoolers, elementary schools. Did all the things. Also was a part of a campus ministry called InterVarsity International, which was a Christian-based organization that sent missionaries out to campus. Um, I was mostly there to make friends and go to Bible study every once in a while. Um, Also, where I met my wife, or ex-wife now, and she also ran a homework tutoring club, um, which I helped with, and yeah, so I did all those things. Also, was a big part of my church growing up. Um, did some political stuff, knocked on doors, did souls to the polls thing during for Obama. Also, just knocked on doors to get people to come to church. Gave out, sorry, I gave out, blankets when it was cold, and clothes, and invited people to come in. Gave people food, helped people with bills when we could, um, into my adulthood as well. Also helped with voter initiatives, registering people to vote became a passion of mine. Um, Anytime there was a initiative to make it easier for people to vote, I signed on to those and helped get things passed. We had Amendment 4 in Florida to make it easier for returning citizens, people getting out of jail or prison, to have their voting rights restored. Um, and I really enjoyed that work, and most of that was through church. I also, during the paid portion of my career, I also worked for almost 4 years up in Ellis County Human Services, where I did a lot of interesting things. Actually, my on-paper job was I think case manager one was my title, but it was like a public benefits enrollment specialist, basically, specifically for a healthcare program that Florida had, county by county. Um, that was we just called it the Pinellas County Healthcare Program. Locally, it was just referred to as the Blue Card because the card was blue. Where it was a very scaled down national healthcare program. They didn't provide every service, but if you were sick, like had a cold, needed a prescription, needed some vision, um, dental was really shaky. It's the most disappointing part of the program, actually. But if you needed like a tooth extracted, they could do that for you. If you have like a weird bump, they can look at you, hearing. It was just a crisis healthcare program that was in between having to go to the ER, urgent care, and not being treated at all. So I did that, and mostly it was an income-based program. So if people were unhoused, we got to waive most or all of the requirements and approve them and get them health care, and so that they could at least have the dignity of having their health taken care of while they search for housing. And if you did have housing, no matter how stable it was, we looked at your income, and if it was below a certain level, you could get approved. You also had to be a U.S. citizen, with some exceptions. if you were had asylum, or if you had been here uh, temporary status. Sorry, I'm forgetting the acronym now. You could get a waiver, and if you were here on a work visa, you could also get a waiver. But if you were here undocumented, or anything of that nature, if you're here on an expired visa, then you couldn't get health care. Um, but if you were unhoused, you could, and either way, you can go to the ER and get it. And so I saw some basic inequities in our healthcare system and in our policy system. It didn't actually make sense, even if you, unlike me, were against um, non-citizens getting health care, which is silly. But if that's your position, this still didn't solve for that, because you could just go to the ER where it was more expensive and still get health care. And so I volunteered to be on our policy board and tried to change that. Got vetoed for the residency and citizens. Well, the residency part I actually won, but the citizenship requirement, everybody else thought that you should be a citizen, or we should have the different process than what I proposed. But I learned a lot from it just the same. Was able to change the residency requirement a little bit, make it easier to prove that you're a resident without having four different forms of identification, and then also streamline the income process. I learned a lot about the poverty line, and what we should do to change it, and that it's a little bit artificial, and it's like a Great Depression creation that hasn't kept up with the modern times. I got to help during COVID. I was volunteered to help with our crisis line, to basically listen to people and try to calm them down, but also hopefully to get the money from the CARES Act trickle down so that we could pay bills, and also um, keep people housed, and sometimes pay for some weird things that came up that weren't expected. It was a fantastic program, but it was just run through a mismanaged program in the organization, 211, or County Informational Services, that did not have enough people. The people that they did have were not trained or paid well enough to actually do the jobs. You had some people yelling at people that called, and I felt so bad because we referred so many people to 211 when it wasn't COVID times, and hadn't a lot of us hadn't thought to call ourselves and see what how the customer service was. So at least for a few months, I could guarantee that some of the people that called at least got premium customer service. I didn't yell at anybody. I, heard them out, tried to help them where I could, and if I couldn't, they at least had 5 minutes where somebody saw them as a person. Um, After that, I worked in the um, vaccination centers, where I myself got vaccinated, and my job was officially to monitor people and make sure that they weren't having adverse reactions. But the entire time I was there, the only adverse reactions, and this isn't like a state secret or anything, the only adverse reactions that I saw were people that were, afraid of needles passing out, or that were a little scared, um, or who were now nervous through the crowds. No adverse reactions to the actual vaccine. And so my job just became to calm people down, talk to them. They had to wait for, I believe it was 10 minutes before they were allowed to leave after they got the shot. And then they had to come back for the second round. This was Pfizer. So, there were 40 people in the room at a time. There was a line out the door stretching around the building most days. We started with older people, and since, I was born and raised there, I knew quite a lot of them. And so sometimes I could greet them by name, talk them through it, distract them from the needle, if no one else was there to do that. Sometimes hold a hand, sometimes give them some water, show them where the bathroom was, all that stuff. Um, COVID happened to coincide with what would have been my 10-year high school reunion, so it was nice to see some of my former high school um, colleagues or friends there, and kind of catch up and reminisce and, just do life together. I had great um, moments with people that I will probably never see again, and who I hope are doing well. Um, I saw some people that uh, were at least locally famous, and even some people who had publicly um, poo-pooed this effort and complained about the vaccination and cast doubt on it, but they were in line just with everyone else. And I won't tell you who they are because I do think that we should keep things like that private, even though I don't personally think that in this situation, I don't think HIPAA actually applied. It was a crisis. There were 40 other people in the room at a given time, but some people did come in sunglasses and scarves and tried to hide their identity. Um, some of them were politicians, some of them were political advisors, some of them were just like pop culture figures, and it was just interesting. It's a thing that reveals so much about people and society, and people come together in the end, and the things that they might be saying to get paid aren't actually what they believe for themselves. So keep that in mind if there's another pandemic. This person's getting paid thousands or millions of dollars to, you know, spread this hate mongering message and tell you that you shouldn't take care of yourself. I don't know. Ask some questions. See if they see what they did for themselves. After that, I ended up only working with the county for a few more months before I moved up here to Maryland. And there, my first job in Maryland was working through Catholic Charities, mm, rehousing people who DC had a pretty um, good with some caveats, program to bring unhoused people in off the streets and put them in a hotel. Um, this was off of Wadensburg. I forget which hotel it was. There's two, and they were in both. But whatever, Hotel Arboretum. That's what it is. The Arboretum Hotel. Um, where people lived there for like a year or two, and they were trying to wind down the program. And the Trump administration had given enough money for the program, but not enough training or resources or actual housing options to actually move people from this hotel to permanent housing. So some people were just there, and so there wasn't actually a lot for me to do. So I talked to people, heard them out, helped them apply for SNAP, and learned about the system myself, the local quirks to um, DC and Maryland, and um, how their enrollment processes work because it's different than in Florida. Um, some ways good and some ways bad. Some ways it's just okay. Why do we do this? Such as the mid-year review, or in Florida it's like a 3 month. Every 3 months you have to get a review, and we can just get rid of that. It doesn't apply to a lot of people. A lot of people have the same income in January of 2026 as they will in January 2027. Um, and if it changes, a lot of times it's in the opposite direction. They lose income, not gaining income. But if you make $25,000 in 2024, and then you have a good year in 2025, and you're making $50,000, that's cool. Just when it's time to re up for SNAP, those people probably won't apply again. But if you do, then you just won't be eligible. And I just think it's silly that we think 6 months or 3 months is going to drastically change someone's life, to the point to where the government should just cut off benefits if they don't hear from you. But that was the case with a lot of people there. There were some people who didn't want to be there, wanted to be in their own place, but just couldn't afford it. Some people couldn't afford it because they had lots of medical issues and they couldn't afford to live by themselves and get treatment. They had to do one or the other. Some people were there because they didn't have family that would allow them to stay for whatever reason. The family drama, and so it was like, you can't stay with me, you can't stay with me. And so they had a job, they had the money, but all of a sudden they were out on the street. You had people who had been released from a 20-year prison sentence, and They done their time. They did what they need to do in prison. They got educated. They got the skills, but no one would hire them, and they were just having trouble getting back in society. And we don't have a very good system that's not part of just a charity model to bring those people in and help them. Um, so I say that Catholic charity, but again, the program wasn't designed to do anything but keep people there, which was better than nothing, I will say. But I was applying for jobs every day because I was getting paid to sit in a room most days. And I like to be active and helping people. And it was a nice pay bump because Maryland and DC pay a lot better than Florida. You probably knew that, but just in case you didn't, I went from making, I think, my $32,000 to $50,000 a year, and then I went to Feeding America, where I got another pay bump. Um, 73 was what I was given, but what um, but the advertisement said anywhere between $64,000 and $84,000, and I asked for $80,000 because I thought that's what my experience and time was worth, and also what they were asking me to do was worth more than what they were paying me. They wanted me to build a program and also run a grant and also um, do some policy work. So it was three jobs rolled into one, but I'm used to doing that. So we settled on about 73, and then over the years, eventually I got up to 98.5 anyway. Um, but then they did a round of massive layoffs, and there was some specific stuff that happened that I'm not allowed to talk about because they made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is also part of the reason why I think we should get rid of them. The non-disclosure agreements. Feeding America could say, but as they would tell you, and as every charity with a good marketing team will tell you, their job is to work themselves out of a job. Whether charities believe it or not, I'll leave that for you to decide. Look at their work and see if they're actually doing that, if they're actually trying to fix the big problem, or if they're trying to stay alive for another year. And to be fair, some of them are so small that all they can do is afford to try to stay alive another year. But like our members of Congress, I don't think that's a good use of anyone's time or money. I don't think it's good to just exist and that be your policy. So I knew that lesson before going to Feeding America, but I feel stronger about it afterwards. But Feeding America has some phenomenal people and some good programs. And you have the national office where I work, and you have all the food banks that's around the nation. And the food banks are just where people donate the food. That can be individuals, corporations, um, farmers, um, and ranchers and such. Like, for example, Maryland's having a program, Baltimore specifically, where there's a lot of deer. And so I think for the third year in a row, they're going to pay hunters during a short time to hunt the deer, reduce the population, control disease. But they're also going to donate that meat to the Maryland Food Bank, I believe. There's a few food banks that cover Maryland, so it could be a different food bank. Capitol Hill Food Bank, which is in DC, also covers parts of Maryland as well. So they could spread it out. And then there's another Maryland Food Bank that covers Maryland and Delaware. Anyways, I learned a lot about policy. I learned a lot about communication and advocacy. Um, I don't actually think that we did it perfectly because we still did a lot of speaking for people rather than just giving them the mic and giving them the money directly. But the way that the organization was set up, we still had to go through the food bank, and that was not the most efficient way to do things. But the way that the organization is set up, that's what we had to do. So I ran a grant that I also wrote, as I mentioned, that taught people how to organize and advocate for themselves, in their communities and come up with their solutions that are neighborhood specific for solving food insecurity. Um, the grant was over 2 years for the first cohort, and then a year for the second cohort. Um, but it ended up being wound down due to fears that the Trump administration wouldn't like a program like that. Like I said, I was constrained with how it was designed because it's not my money and it's not my organization. I just work there. Um, but it did show me that it's easier to, you know, do an organizing program like this than you might think. You just need money and email list really, and partners that are willing to back you. But there were things like in Arizona where they had a pretty good transportation program. Some people just couldn't get to the food, to the grocery store or to the food bank, and so having a transportation route from their house to where there was food drastically improved their life. They could just go to the grocery store, get the groceries, and come home, and it was good. Some people decided to have a pop-up market in their schools, in their child's schools, and so they could pick up their kids school from school, and then they could also pick up dinner. Some people found that healthcare was really the issue because the hospital closed, and so they decided to open up another clinic. And then once people were able to go to the clinic, when they had, like, say, a cold, they didn't have to worry about that cold making things worse and the medical bills adding up and cutting into their food supply. It was a really interesting view into how there's all of these policies intersect. Um, if you have stable housing but you can't eat, you're not in a great place. If you can eat but you have nowhere to, microwave your food, then you're also not in a great place. So you have to have everything in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have basic needs. You have to have safety. You have to be able to dream for, dream of a future that's brighter than where you're at now. Partially what I was going with for my slogan, Forward Faster, um, is those lofty ideas, but also this is something Obama wanted to do, but I just think it was too slow. He wanted to move forward, but at the snail's pace and incremental, and I think we need large system changes. We need holistic policy. We need things that speak to people as individuals and also as communities. We need to make sure it's not just, I don't know, a mom in Iowa gets a new business because the Small Business Administration gave her a grant. We need to make sure that that community has money to be able to, buy things from that business. Otherwise, that business is just going to fail, right? Um, but I left Feeding America. I did some work tutoring, and my least favorite subject, by the way. I was a math tutor. I would have been a much better English tutor or history tutor or even a science tutor. But algebra, geometry, I was efficient enough to teach ninth graders for about 6 months, and might still pick up some work now and then. It's as needed position, and so that was interesting 6 months where I just helped some kids and also doing gig work through Uber. That's mostly what's paying my bills, and some writing. Some of the writing has been policy, some of it has been grants, some of it has just been some fiction that I've been interested in. I've been trying to write a book for a year or so, but time is a non-renewable resource, and I have not finished it yet, but getting pretty close. So that's a little bit about me and my experience and resume. I did skip over quite a few things. Like I mentioned previously, I was in the church all my life, until recently actually. And I was on church council at two different churches, finance. So I'm not that bad at math, I just don't like it. um, Helping bring in money and also deciding where to spend that money. And I've seen that sometimes what you say in public doesn't matter if what you're spending your money on doesn't match that. And also, I've seen that, you know, sometimes people will disagree with you in public but pay you in private. So there's that. But also, I learned more about just how systems work, how community works, the rules that you have to follow if you are a religious institution. They're like a special nonprofit, but I've also obviously seen the rules that nonprofits have to navigate, and especially those nonprofits that are profess to be nonpartisan, those 503Bs and all that. Um, I worked at two churches. One was Presbyterian or Episcopal, depending on the year. um, and one that was Methodist. And Methodists speak a little bit more to my soul, but also wasn't great for my tendency to overwork and overcommit. COVID was actually useful to me to learn to step back and take care of myself and relax. So the last couple of years, actually, I did take a step back. I did a lot of the political writing, and I did a lot of work. I started actually an organization with my friend Sam Ronan in Florida called Tampa Bay for Change and Florida for Change to do voter education and register people to vote and give people resources and organize online and offline. And did that back in 2020 and just kept that going even after I moved. Though Sam did a lot of the heavy lifting, I should say. And so I focused on that, but I did take a step back from going to protest and meetings and such over the last 2 years, because it's been a rough 2 years personally, economically. But when I was at Allendale UMC, lovely church with lovely people, I was also a co-lay leader, which is the highest position you can reach without being ordained. And yeah, so I got to help organize the church, got to give a few sermons, not very good ones. I was got nervous being like, what can I say in church? But I also helped organize our church to participate in organizations such as DART, Direct Action. I don't remember what it stands for. Sorry. But the version that was local to Pinellas County and Pasco was FAST, which was Faith, Action, Stronger Together. Basically, we united churches and mosques and synagogues for collective action to move forward on issues that were important to our communities and organization at large. We got to vote every year on what priorities to focus on, and so I led my church to focus on housing, also mental health care, and policing, criminal justice reform. And we won on all those issues. There was an affordable housing push. We built more housing. We set it to, I'm going to butcher the numbers now, so I don't want to give too specifics, but the median annual API. Basically, we looked at the area, and if it took the average family $30,000 to be able to afford a 4-bedroom house, we built houses, or we paid for. I didn't build these houses. We paid for those affordable units to be built there, and they're supposed to be priced at an amount where that family could afford. It's not perfect. I personally think that we should have done something aimed at people who were on economic run, people that made $0 or owed money or were fresh out of jail or prison or already on the streets, as I mentioned. Because if we have a stronger baseline, if we have like a trampoline where you fall and you get to bounce back, then that helps everybody. If you just have it for people who are not rich, by any means, then you might prevent them from ending up like worse off. But they're also just one hurricane away, or one car crash, or eviction notice from being in that lowest ring. So I did learn more about that, during that experience. Um, Also, help start community gardens at both of those churches, and also in the community, help people eat. Also, just help some of our friends learn how to grow food, and do some guerrilla gardening and stuff, and that was very fun. Also was part of, I believe it was Family Promise, where we housed people at the church. Um, had the radical idea that we had all this space that's only used on Sundays or Saturdays or Wednesdays, depending where you're going. Maybe we should let people live there when no one else is, when there's no other people there. Um, there were also other services provided, some of which I don't really want to talk about. I don't want to, violate anyone's privacy or anything, but there were, some one-on-one things that could help people do. Sometimes it was as simple as getting people school supplies. Sometimes it was just watching your kids for a few hours, usually with my wife, who was the childcare director and nursery coordinator at both of those churches. Might have been another title thrown in there somewhere. She was also on church council. Her kids learned to go to lots and lots of protests, which they really enjoy to this day. It was a fantastic time. Again, the one issue was just it fed into behavior that led to burnout. So take care of yourself if you are a similar personality or place in your life. Yeah, just be a little bit more flexible. You don't have to be everything to everyone all the time. You can take a step back, and sometimes it's fine to just stay home during the weekend, play video games, and give yourself some rest. There's been a big pushback against people resting lately, and I get it, and I'm there. But I think what people mean is we don't want people to be apathetic, because apathy is what's keeping fascism alive and imperialism alive and letting people off the hook. And we don't have enough people voting or participating in our democracy. But we have to give them a reason to. We have to, win on some of these fights, and actually have the fights and show people the alternative of what happens when we win. When we win, and that just means people go to brunch more. I can't afford brunch, so what does that have to do with me? If we win and, we have a really good policy for only 3 months, then is anyone going to remember that 5 years from now? I think we should just do things that help people, and then just keep doing more things to help people, and eventually people will look around and notice things are better, and maybe keep voting for those. So as you can see, that's what I've dedicated my life's work to doing, is helping people. And it doesn't pay very well, but it should. And if we just had some basic, some basic safety net protections, it would be easier for people like myself to do this work. And the easy thing to do is just to do one big project, maybe get one thing passed, and then pivot to politics and point to this one good thing that you did and say, look, see, I did help you should elect me to represent you. And that's good. I don't begrudge people that do that. No one has to dedicate their life to helping people. But I think instead of having stand-ins for the community, represent the community, you could just have people that are a part of the community and have dedicated their life to helping that same community. You can have them in office instead of having people that promise to help poor people. You can have poor people promising to end poverty, instead of having people that are dedicated to bringing affordable housing 10 years from now to some people who meet a complex income guidelines and means testing. You could just have somebody that's been homeless, is homeless, technically, currently, um, promise to do something about that. We promise to fight to end homelessness in America and beyond. Um, we could do that. We could have people with bigger dreams so that when we have to settle, if we have to settle, and I don't think that's a given, we land a little bit closer to the dream, as opposed to, a promise or a cardboard box for everybody, because that's just not worth fighting for. So there's the longer spill, background. There's some other stuff too. Plenty of other, interest and life experience, and lots of volunteer experience. I didn't talk about my parents or family all that much. Just a quick spill on them, to give you a little bit more background, but maybe I'll talk about them more in a different video. But I'm the second of four siblings that, or kids that grew up in a household together. I have other siblings that I didn't meet until a little bit later in life. My dad or stepdad was into construction and also went to school. He went back to school for a few things, and he ended up being a pastor after I was an adult. His mom, my grandmother, was also a pastor and passed away relatively young. My mom's was a stay-at-home parent for much of my life, but then she kept going back to school, and having to stop going to school, and so it was a rough road. But then she finally got her certified nursing associate license, and then she got her LPN, licensed practical nursing license. And some things happened that stopped her from being able to be an RN, but she's a nurse, and she specifically focused on helping older people. So I've been at nursing homes, so many nursing homes, my entire life, and I've seen good ones, I've seen bad ones, I've seen state-run ones, I've seen private ones, and sometimes the state-run ones are good, sometimes they're not, sometimes the private ones are good, sometimes they're not. I was, also had a front seat view to how COVID affected nursing homes, and my mother and my sister, who also works in healthcare, and was working at a private hospital, St. Anthony's Hospital, who I don't feel bad saying didn't provide their employees with PPE. They provided a lot of the, obviously doctors and surgeons and stuff with them, but any of the lower ranking positions, they were kind of like you're on your own. And so my sister obviously didn't feel comfortable in those conditions. My nephew, her sons, had some health conditions that she just didn't feel comfortable. She got sick, and one of my nephews had some health conditions that she was worried about. And then my older brother, as I mentioned, was in the Army. He's a veteran. My younger brother has done various amount of jobs. He worked with my dad in construction for a while. Also worked in retail. Does Uber every once in a while as well. So there's my family. I grew up helping do some construction and quickly found out that I did not want to do that. But, it was a little bit different when I got to volunteer to do it for Habitat Humanity. They were, bring your friends and build a house, and that's more fun than doing it with your siblings and dad, in my opinion. And then, got to be at nursing homes all the time. I got my volunteer hours mostly at South Heritage Health and Rehabilitation Center, where my mom worked for almost a decade. I got to do some volunteer coordinator stuff and also activity coordinator. So I got to get people to do karaoke and play checkers. And I found out that even if I'm playing against someone that has really bad memory loss, they will beat me at checkers. And that was not good for my self-esteem. So I just, I prefer chess and Monopoly and Scrabble and, games that I'm good at. But not good at checkers. So if you take anything away from this video, it's just that you could probably beat me at checkers. So if you watch this whole video, comment checkers in the comments. But yeah, I'm sure I'll make more of these, some more personal videos, talk about my life and experience and why I think what I think. And I skipped over a lot of my work background before college, but it was mostly retail. A lot of it after college was retail too. Was cashier for the most part. I also worked in restaurants as a server. Did some odd jobs in elections and also at special events. But yeah, there's the video. I wanted to keep it a little bit under an hour, so here we are. I hope you learned something from this, and if you want to find out more information, you can go on my website at KyrieEdwardsForCongress.com and stay tuned for more.